Howdy folks, we're talking about advice today. Have y'all or a loved one been the victim of bad GMing advice? Did someone swindle you into forcing a TPK? Were you told your players were interested in a terrible comic book plot? Y'all may be entitled to compensation. We'll figure it out today. Why does Game Master advice suck? The answer's in one word: reproducibility. There's a reproduction crisis in the tabletop space, and I don't mean the increase in sex pests we're dealing with at conventions. I mean we can't reproduce the events at someone else's table. Y'all might say, this seems like a good thing. Tabletop games are supposed to be open-ended, and sessions are supposed to vary from one another, but reality takes its due. They're often not that different. Beating skeletons into re-death is going to look similar between 5e tables. The differences are measurable. We can see how each DM handles encounters from a bird's eye view, and if, and how, each one deviates from the game. Y'all can point out how each game is run and played differently, giving y'all know how to explain it. Problem is, nobody does, not without a list of caveats longer than whatever advice they have anyways. Not withoof an army of NPCs coming in to let you know with absolute certainty there's no better or worse way of running a game. It's exhausting. Y'all don't want to get exhausted, your only choice is to give no advice at all. Well, maybe making it sound like you are. So let me give you all an example. Let's say we're playing 5th edition and two of your friends have decided to give you advice before starting your first campaign. The first tells you not to give the players too many magic items, but he adds don't forget to give the players rewards though. The second friend tells y'all to give the party a sentient magic sword by level 2, one for each martial character if y'all can help it. Special thanks to the one and only particularist for that bit of handy advice. Now the first fella hasn't told you anything. You've got no idea how many magic items to give the players now. Y'all have no idea how many is too many, and y'all don't know what the hell your friend means by don't forget to give them rewards. All that really matters to the players is magic items and leveling. Maybe gold. Do those count? The second friend, recognizing the value of being bold and direct, has decided to give you a defined, unambiguous goal. Y'all can ask questions from a common frame of reference. Each participant knows what the other is talking about. Y'all can disagree. Folks want to avoid giving the wrong advice to their peers, and that may be admirable. This is a social hobby, and mishaps can damage friendships and acquaintances, but let's take another example. Y'all turn to discussing with your friends whether to ban certain races or class options from your game. Friend number 1 says to stick to what makes sense in the world. Ignore supplements and additional customization if you don't think it would make sense. Friend number 2 recommends you nix one of the player's handbook races for every splatbook race y'all include. Following suit, they recommend you nix one player subclass from the player's handbook for each splatbook subclass y'all make available. Now, which of the two provided you with bad advice? Trick question. Both of your impromptu counselors here provided y'all with bad advice. But following from our last example, these two nuggets of false wisdom are bad for different reasons. Friend number 1 has yet again deigned to waste your time with wishy-washy nonsense, while friend number 2 has done the due diligence and courtesy of implying there's a right answer, even though their answer was wrong. Not only does it imply a right answer in the context of being a game master, it also includes a number of conversational hooks for y'all to enjoy with your players. The discussion needn't end with the folks giving you the advice. The folks playing at your table can participate as well and engage in polite and thoughtful disagreement thanks to the framing provided by friend number 2. Oh, and all credit to the angry GM on whose bad advice friend number 2 was modeled. One final example, for I am a slave to the rule of 3. You'll take your friends aside and ask them, what game should y'all run? Friend number 1 excitedly replies that 4th edition provides a revolutionary and enjoyable experience for players who like character customization, heroic fantasy, and combat. All reliable, friend number 2 suggests that AD&D offers a wider campaign scale and support for multiple groups, but BX will save folks looking for an old school taste without as much actual gameplay. We come again to judge our partners. Which of the two has provided y'all with bad advice? A trick question again. Both have provided y'all with good advice, but for separate reasons. Your first friend, finally finding themselves broken down and forced to say something of substance, has finally given you a good recommendation based off a set of preferences. It's a different set of preferences on a separate axis of values from friend number 2, which is why friend number 2's advice is also helpful. The key here is that both have finally provided a space for propositions of substance, meaningful disagreements, and a conversational frame in which participants allow for a correct answer. The key here is that both have finally provided a space for propositions of substance, meaningful disagreements, and a conversational frame in which participants allow for a correct answer. By taking away our own ability to disagree, we've lost a lot of the meaning, which starts conversations about better and worse gaming. I don't mean facing social consequences for disagreement, by the way. The advice we talk about nowadays is so meaningless, there's barely anything to reasonably disagree with. Everyone's auditioning to write the Art of War's sequel. They spit out aphorisms and metaphors like they're G.K. Chesterton trying to sound profound without actually committing to advice. Does what you're telling me let me run a game like you? Are there no rules to how you play? Do the books matter at all from session to session? Or do your players have to figure out whether you're ripping off a Star Trek episode this session and they better pick up enough plot coupons tonight if they want a real chance at gaming next Thursday? The YouTubers, bloggers, and other pundits sticking to safe advice can't answer these questions. They can't help you run tables like they run tables. If extremely online tabletop personalities run their games how they feel, you're boned. You don't feel the way your favorite D&D YouTuber feels. How would you know if you're running a game like them? Nowadays, we're also playing worse games. 5th edition doesn't even have basic functional encounter design tools, the monsters are universally boring and rarely correspond to their challenge ratings, and they're all the GM has. There's no big book of traps, environmental hazards, social and exploration encounters, just monsters. The GM has no resources for running an effective sandbox, they don't even have resources for running effective combats. In fact, you see this kind of wishy-washy nonsense come up most when discussing non-combat modes of play. Remember not to overload the players with combat during a travel scene, but it's okay to have a fight or two. Don't request too many checks from the players during exploration, but don't be afraid of letting them fail forward. Remember to have the NPCs talk plenty, but not too much. Non-combat play gets the biggest share of bad advice because it's something we know the least about in tabletop RPGs. It doesn't stop you from running decent games. Most campaigns are about resolving conflict to one degree or another, and combat serves better than most to handle said resolution. Exploration, diplomacy, taming, these different slices of play are puzzles designers still struggle to assemble today. WotC found it so troublesome they couldn't be bothered to put it in their star game even 8 years from release. Hell, with the advent of 1D&D, Wizards of the Coast will have completely ignored core support for non-combat modes of play for the lifespans of 2 full editions of D&D. If I had to guess, they're working on number 3. Well folks, I hope y'all understand why I find conventional RPG advice so ineffectual, so time-wasting. Remember, good advice does not hesitate to establish a frame and common reference for the sake of conversation. Don't worry if your advice is bad. Instead, focus on mimicking the structure of good advice. The resulting conversation can help establish where y'all went wrong, and improve the quality of future conversation between participants, especially now that y'all have a better understanding of one another. A lot of my prescriptions are truly just guidelines for having better conversations about tabletop games. With better conversations comes better advice. There's plenty of folks out there telling you there's no wrong choices. Any style of play is just as valid as any other. All advice is to be followed or discarded at will. None of us really believe in any of that nonsense, and we most certainly have no need of another preacher for that dysfunctional choir. Better to hash out our differences, fight for territory over the hobby, and figure out what we really believe along the way. Music was provided by Blue Dot Sessions. If y'all enjoyed this video, I'd recommend taking a stop by my DriveThru RPG page, see what my ideas look like when put into practice. Beyond that, y'all know how YouTube works, y'all know what the bell icon does if you want to see my videos in your feed and notifications in the future. Y'all know what to click. Without further ado, peace.